So here's some added tips relating to turbo, okay? Um, you don't want to, obviously I went over that you, in a way, don't want to use them carelessly as well. Like you just don't, like a beginner will usually just get one and use it right away. You don't want to do that. I already mentioned that. But what you also don't want to do is, let's say oops, you messed up and you end up dying, and then you panic and you just use it right away. It is not smart to do that because, especially if you're early in your race, if you're early in your race, it is completely foolish to just waste your turbo right off the bat like that. Now, it's more understandable if, let's say, you're closer to the end of your race and you just died and you got a turbo. You're just going to use it just to kind of catch up or just to keep your momentum going. That's a little bit different because you're already close to the end where you're not going to really be able to recover a lot of that momentum if you die and you're right close to the end. So then in that scenario, it's not as big of a deal. But it is a horrible idea to die and then you're in lap one and you just start panicking using a turbo because you think you're not going to catch up. You got to remember that there is a catch-up mechanic in place that helps you catch up to the pack. So you're better off waiting a little bit before making that decision if you're going to be using one again, but it's better to stick into a routine of picking your places where you're going to use your turbo. So like a lot of places on maps, they have a big canyon, or a long stretch of a canyon where you need to get over, where you can use your turbo to make it get more use out of it. You use it while you're stacking boost pads and your drift, okay? But turbo placement is important, but make sure that you don't just panic. You just use them out of panic because that is a bad idea unless you're close to the end. All right. Let's see. And do not overhoard turbos. So as you can see, I just got full turbos right now. I have 3. So that means every time I drift, I'm not getting any more for the meter for building turbo. Okay. So let's say if I'm a little ways back here. Let's see here. Let me get back over here real quick. So let's say I'm over here and I haven't used any turbos for whatever reason because I was preserving them or saving them or whatever as a strategy. You definitely don't want to, if I'm not going to be using a turbo till I'm all the way over there by that checkpoint, kind of where that rock is sticking, kind of upper left, that's going to be a ways where I could build up another turbo, so it's not wise to hold on to them. So you're better off using one like early, if that's the case, because then you can kind of build another one where you can probably have another one by the time you get over there, okay? So kind of like this, so like this, because I almost have another full one, see? And I can kind of use like a cut right here, but then I already got another turbo that's right there, you see? So you really got to kind of gauge that if you got a little ways away and you're maxed out on turbo, it's a good idea to use one to get, so then that way you can build up for another meter. Otherwise, you're robbing yourself of an extra turbo. It's very rare that I have a turbos fully maxed in my routes, but if I do, it's usually because I managed to get extra drift. I managed to get a little bit more drift somehow, and if I'm about maxed for any reason, it means I'm about to actually hit a spot where I'm going to use a turbo, like for turbo placement. So if, let's say, I'm going to be using a turbo up here, but I'm already maxed out, I'm already maxed out as an example, and it's going to take me about 5 seconds or so, and I'm going to choose to use one here. It's good to go ahead and just not use it too early. Just use it at the spot you're choosing, but make sure you pick your spots where to use turbo. You want to get into a routine of that, so that way you maximize the use of your turbo without overly hoarding them, because you don't want to be carrying turbos around maxed out the whole time. All right, it's really a bad idea. One thing to keep in mind as well, and this is a little bit more of an advanced tip, I should say. If, let's say, you use an average of you use 2 turbos on average every lap, okay, or maybe even 3. Let's say you pick a spot where you don't use a turbo and you want to save it so you have more turbo later from your routine. It is not a bad idea to not use a turbo and preserve one in the first lap so you have more to use by the last lap, where if you'd use 2 each lap, you can make it where you use 1 in the first lap, 2 in the second lap, and then you have an extra one, meaning 3 in the third lap, okay? It is a strategy where you can kind of catch people at the end, where you're relying on the catch-up mechanic to keep you caught up, So by the time it closes the gap, because let's say if somebody was following the exact same route you were, okay, you and somebody else is going the exact same route, and you use 1 turbo and they use 2 in lap 1, the catch-up mechanic is going to close that gap, is most likely, actually I should say it's most likely going to close that gap of the turbo that they used early that you didn't, because then it's going to give you, there's a good chance that you're going to have an extra turbo that is going to let you pass them at the very end. So there is turbo use strategy there as well. So it is a good idea to be a little smarter about it when you are using turbo, coming up with a strategy. Don't panic and just use them freely, all right? One more tip that relates to turbo that I did not want to forget, because I know I will forget this later. When you first use your turbo, and before you finish the second part of your turbo, you can actually wait about a second and a half before pressing the second part of your turbo to finish it. Because if you press it too early, like you press the first part of the turbo and then you press it right when the light is going to flicker, you're basically rushing through where you're maximizing your speed too soon, I guess you could say, because immediately once the turbo is over, it already starts to recalibrate, slowing you down on your speed because you're already on the ground. All right, that's just how the game works. Whatever speed you are when you come from floating to landing on the ground, whatever your speed is, it's going to slow you down pretty much instantly down to that speed for the most part. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. As such, here I go. I'm going to turbo, and if you press it too early, I don't think you don't really get the full maximum benefit. People have learned that you can actually gain more from it when you turbo, wait a second or two, and then press it, okay? It kind of like spaces out. Like you keep it maybe look like it's the same speed that you're getting, but it's thrusting you forward a little bit longer, like delaying it before doing the finish, okay? Because so there's a benefit to both. And the reason I point this out is because I'm going to kind of demonstrate to you that you can do a drift, you can build a drift, use your turbo, finish your turbo, and then release your drift in that order, or you can build a drift, turbo, release your drift, and then finish your turbo, okay? There's a disadvantage and advantage to both, but it really just comes down to map placement and just basically scenario. So I'm going to go over side flips as well after this video, I think, but I'm going to demonstrate this now for you. So first I'm building a drift, I turbo, finish the turbo, then I release the drift. See that? So if you watch my speed, it kind of stayed a little bit more spaced out, but not as explosively high in speed. But it was like more spaced out, I guess you could say. Because when you land, because if you land early, you're already at a higher speed when you land to build up your next drift. So that is kind of where that advantage is. But if you use it all at once and like release your turbo and your drift, when you release the second part of your turbo and you release your drift around the same time or close to the same time, you get more upfront thrust. But when you land, when you land really quick, as an example, or you land not long after, you're going to be right back down to default speed right away. So it really depends on the scenario of the map and where you're at, okay, and what you're trying to accomplish. I'm going to do it again, but with drift, turbo, release my drift, then finish the turbo, okay? So that's what I'm going to do now, okay? So big drift, turbo, release my drift, jump side flip, finish the turbo, okay? So you get more air thrust up front when you release the second part of your turbo and drift around closer to the same time, but when you space it out more, you don't get as much speed to coast in the air. But when you if you get to the ground quick, you're already going to have some more speed if you do it where you do the turbos first before releasing the drift. All right, it's just I know that's getting really technical, but I do just want to throw that out there because that's something that I didn't really understand or know until way later when I started already getting to the levels of Unreal and things like that. And it was just little things that made all the difference when I would run my routes on maps. I'm just throwing that out there so you know, okay? That might be a little advanced, but it's just something to keep in mind, like for food for thought. Okay, now that's pretty much the end of the tips for the turbos right now. Now we're going to move on to the next topic.